It's not about looking good. It's about being good. It's not what you say, it's what you do that matters most. It's about having the courage to step into your arena and do the work. Welcome to No Show Dogs, powered by ReliaQuest. Hey, welcome back to the No Show Dogs podcast, powered by ReliaQuest. My name's Derin McMains, and I'm alongside our founder and CEO today, Brian Murphy. Murph, how are you doing, man?
D-Mac, I'm good, man. It's always good to be with you.
Yeah. Hey, today we got a banger. We got a banger of an episode. We got a special guest. I can't wait to introduce everyone to him. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by NFL Hall of Famer Rondé Barber. Rondé, welcome to No Show Dogs.
Can I give you an air pound?
Hey, welcome.
Yeah, air pound, D-Mac.
Yeah,
Bam.
Virtual. I got you, man. Hey, we're so fired up that you've decided to join us today and just share some wisdom that you've gained along the way. And for our listeners out there, I was joking before we went on air and said that I wasn't going to go through all of the accolades that Rondé has racked up in his 16-year NFL career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I'm not going to go through all those, because I think when someone enters into Canton, into the NFL Hall of Fame, it kind of speaks for itself. So we're definitely going to we're going to spare you all the long list of that and just kind of jump right into the meat and potatoes of this. But know this, listeners, we got a true legend of the game here. Arguably one of the greatest defensive backs in NFL history. And we're just going to start right out of the top. Rondé, I know you want to say something, but it's funny. You told us, you're like, man, go for it. I know you're like, man, I really am uncomfortable talking about myself, which is, I think, the beauty of this podcast, because we bring people in that just do the work. They don't want to talk about it. They are about it. Right. And so we just, again, appreciate you coming on here.
So if I could say one thing about my accolades, they all mattered for about 26 years until about February. And the only one that matters now is Pro Football Hall of Famer. And actually, I wore my hat for you because when I was number 20 when I was playing, the only number I answer to now is 363. And that's my number in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Oh, I love that.
Enough said. All the other stuff.
That's great.
I love it.
That's great. Hey, tell us what it was like. Like, what's it like when you got the call that you were going into the National Football Hall of Fame? Like, tell us about that.
So, do you want the real story, or do you want the story that we've had to narrate?
We always want the real. We always want the real. Always want the real.
I don't think the Pro Football Hall of Fame is going to be excited to hear this, but the process is they vote, and then they don't tell you or me whether or not I get in. They go find someone close to you, in my instance, my wife, Claudia, and tell her the day after they vote. And it's her job to keep it a secret for a week.
Wow.
Until Derek Brooks comes and knocks on my door and tells me that I'm in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So 2 successive years. So I was a six-time semifinalist, 3-time finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The first 2 years, I called somebody right after the vote, and I got the answer. I'm sorry, man, you're not in. Right? This year, I did the same. I called everybody I knew, and not only did I not get a response, I got crickets. So nobody would tell me anything. So I'm mad. Had a couple scotches. You know how it is. Go to bed. The next day, still heard nothing. We go out to dinner, and we come home at 9:30, and Claudia goes up to the TV and sticks her cell phone like right in the TV. I'm like, what are you doing? Next thing you know, my best friend Brian knocks on the door, comes in. And then my buddy Paul knocks on the door, he comes in. And, I was born yesterday, but I'm starting to figure out what's going on. Then my buddy Ben comes in, and she tells me, if you were in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, would you want to know? And I'm like, what does that even mean? She's like, Rondé, if you were in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, would you want to know? And Brian's like, yes, say yes. And so I said, sure. And then she pulled out a Pro Football Hall of Fame hat, and those were the real emotions. She actually,
that's great.
Uh, but it was a heck of a journey for me. And I don't know that I ever thought that I would be in there, but now that I am, I'm glad that she did it the way she did, because it was real. Um, and then a week later, I had to pretend like I just found out from there.
Oh man, so great. I can't imagine just, it had to hit you as it's happening. What's going through your mind did it take a little bit to process, or did all that sacrifice, that work, what was that flood of emotion that came next, I guess, or did it take a while?
Yeah. So it's interesting. And this probably defines me as a person, definitely as a player, more than anything that you'll hear about me today during this podcast. And my friends know this. People that I played with know this. By the time I got announced as a Pro Football Hall of Famer, I expected to be a Pro Football Hall of Famer.
I love that.
And when I left the league in 2012, I took inventory. I looked at what I did. It's all out there. Stats, plays, signature plays or not, the manner in which I went about doing my job, incomparable to anybody else who had done the job before me, probably after, just in my specific circle. And I knew that eventually I would get the call. So the toughest part for me was waiting 6 years. And it's easy to say that now that I'm in because it's such a process that I could still be waiting. But I think the merit of my resume was finally impossible to ignore, and so I expected it.
I love that. In talking about it a little bit, like the incomparable success you had, one thing I saw was that you're the only defensive back in NFL history to be a member of the 45-25 club, which means you had 45 career interceptions, 45 plus, excuse me, career interceptions.
40.
But who's counting? And over 25 career sacks. How many sacks did you have?
Actually, it was 47 and then 28 sacks. So
47 and 28. Yeah. So the only member in NFL history, a defensive back, to be a member of the 45-25 club. But the question I want to ask on the back of that is this. At the NFL Combine, let's talk about the NFL Combine, right? The NFL Combine, for those of you that don't know, it's, Rondé, you're better to describe it than me. How would you describe the NFL Combine and its purpose?
Again, do you want the honesty?
Oh yeah, this could be good.
made for TV. Go for
right.
it.
If before I answer that, would you be surprised that I'm disappointed that I didn't get to 30 sacks? Now that would have been unique. That would have been cool. Combine. It's a meat market. It really is. It's a measuring tool for all 32 teams to get what you consider the top, or what they consider the top prospects in the country, put them all in one space, measure them, check their cognitive skills, however they go about doing that. There's a bunch of different ways how to do that, by the way. And then seeing what their mental makeup is. I think probably the most important part of it for most people, or for most teams, is what they look like in a meeting with the head coach and the GM and the scouts and whatever position coach they're sitting with, because everybody knows what they can do physically. That's easily measured. You can put the film on and see how they play, but the combine really is about how you handle yourself in your first real, call it job interview, for the profession. Mine was good on that aspect. It wasn't that good on the on the other side of it. And I was a great player in college, but I bonked at the combine. It was bad.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask about, because it's like you look at the physical skills, right? We talk about speed and strength. 14th fastest out of defensive backs 40-yard dash. I'm going to bring these up only because I think it paints such a great picture of the intangibles and the things that you brought to your career. 14th fastest in the 40-yard dash, 7th in the vertical jump, broad jump, ranked second, 20-yard shuttle, second to last, bench press tied for 4th, right? I know you're looking at me like, got it. Make your point. The point is,
hey, Brian, where'd you get this guy from?
Yeah. He's warming up. He's warming.
He's like a positive energy guy, man.
Yeah. He's building a house of humility here.
Yeah. So, but this is the amazing thing, right? And it's like 3rd round pick, but what you did in your career, only member of the 45-25 club, only member in NFL history, like that should be a 1-1 pick, right? 1st round, 1st overall. it doesn't show up physically. So like, what is it? Like, what would you credit your incomparable success to? Because I think it's easy for fans to go, oh, he's fast. Oh, he's strong. Oh, he's born that way. And that's just not true. And so what would you credit all your success to?
I would say my first measuring stick, if you want to call the combine that, in regards to my professional career, wasn't the best version of me. And I talk a lot about finding your best self and being your best self. I tell my daughters this all the time as it relates to sports and life. And that's not always easy because you have instances where you're not your best and you still have to go out and prove it to other people. And so if you're asking me where that all that came from, um, I would say that I used it. I used my failure and the doubt and the chance that I could have been this all could have been taken away as fuel. And I think after a year of realizing that, you know, maybe I wasn't good enough, maybe I have a real crisis of confidence right now. It pushed me to be even better. It pushed me to be unique. And some of the things that we talk about, I'm sure you're going to ask me about, is those uncommon things. I started to do things that other people wouldn't do, and the success just followed. It wasn't intentional. As I look back on it, the preparation was intentional, but I didn't set out to do what I did. I just I just wanted to keep playing, wanted to succeed at what I was doing, because those were the expectations of me from myself, certainly from my brother and my mom and all this. That's a different conversation, but those were the expectations of myself. I'd always been successful no matter what I did, because I had the mindset that I was going to be, and this was no different.
Wow, that's powerful. I think it's something that, and I don't know if you relate to this all. DMAC and I have this conversation of, you want to have a tremendous amount of self-belief, but you want to combine that with enough self-doubt, enough insecurity that makes you fearful it's going to go away. You're just fearful that you get to this level of success and someone's going to take it from you. And so you're you have enough belief that you get up and go at it every day, but enough self-doubt that you're going to scrape and claw and scrap. And I think that's the recipe of being willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. There's some balance there.
Right. That's what makes you come in the building, though.
Right.
So I'll give you a story. This is actually a really good story because it happened later in my career. We drafted Aqib Talib, who was a first round draft pick, corner, my position, and I knew they wanted to play him. He was good. He ended up being a really good player in the NFL. Some here, some in New England, Denver, etc. But I saw his talent right away. I was like, wow, this dude's going to take my job. That's what I thought. And this was 2008. So this was year 11 for me, right? Maybe no, it was year 12 for me. And I remember thinking, if I can get through this year and start every single game, maybe I'll play another year, right? Before he takes my job. It was 3 more years before I quit.
It's interesting because I think at a certain level, you're making Pro Bowls, you're a pro, you're 12, 13, 14. You hear almost like you've been an announcer, and you hear it sometimes sports. Wow, he's accomplished so much. And I think people think that it stops mattering to you, like that performing at a high level stops mattering to you. I find the more success, the more it's an expectation. It's the way you show up, and you don't want to slip off of that. I mean, is that as you get forward, it's like I got to prove it to myself more. There's that old line: if I was doing it for you, I'd have nothing left to prove. But I'm doing it for me, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right. Well, yes and no, because there's a sense that I was always trying to prove somebody wrong, whoever it was. I mean, whoever it was. And I think never being satisfied in that is powerful too, right? Like whoever your biggest competitor is, Brian, you're like, that guy thinks he's better than me.
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
And whether he does or doesn't, that guy's probably like, damn, Brian Murphy, he's got this figured out. But it's in your mind, you're like, that dude, he's better than me.
Well, I think we share that. I've heard you talk about your list before, right? You kind of you keep notes, you keep
Yeah.
a record. I call it the will call list.
Oh yeah.
You
Oh, yeah.
either help me win or you can watch me win.
That's
And I'll leave
exactly
you
right.
tickets. You can pick them up at will call and watch like everybody else. Right. And I've always used that. I'm
Yeah.
like, and I just may put it down. Right. And I may not say anything to the person. I just keep going, but it stays there. It
I love
stays
it.
on the list. I mean, you got to have it. It's jet
Right.
fuel.
And then eventually you tick them off and you pass them by and you go on to the next one. And you know what? If there's not a next one, you create one.
100%. And so I've had this. So I listened to your Hall of Fame speech, and so much of it stood out to me. One, I'm going to fan out a little bit here. I've always appreciated the way you carry yourself, the way you represent your team, the way you represent your family. Everywhere I see you, you're the same way. Happy to meet people, super engaging. Appreciate your community, appreciate your family, appreciate your wife. Like all of those things are that consistency. And I listened to your Hall of Fame speech, and one thing that jumped out to me, and I said something to you because we were meeting over at Valspar. One thing we talk about around here a long time is like be uncommon. Like let's be uncommon and build an uncommon company and tackle a problem in an uncommon way and be in our community in an uncommon way. What does that mean to you? You use that word in your Hall of Fame speech, and it struck me.
All right. I used it. I remember when I sat down to actually before I sat down to write my speech with this lady that helped me write my speech. I was talking to Ira Kaufman. He was my presenter. For those of y'all who don't know, he's my presenter. He's got 6 guys in the Hall of Fame, by the way. But he was my presenter these last 6 years. And we were sitting down with Tony Dungy, Coach Bowles, our PR director here, him, and he was going to go through what he was going to tell the Hall of Fame voters prior to them deciding if they were going to elect me, which they ultimately did to the Hall of Fame. And he had this speech. It was very nice. And I was like, you're missing something, And I was like, Ira, I'm uncommon. And it just kind of sparked itself. The word sparked itself right then. But the ideal of it has always been there. It was always been there. And so when I was writing my speech, I had this thought that what I did and how I did it materialized itself because I kept telling myself, whatever I'm doing, nobody else is doing. Right? If I'm running that extra gasser at the end of practice, it's because nobody else is doing it. If I'm taking another lap around the track in the off season, I'm doing it because nobody else is doing it. And so in my speech, before I got to writing out uncommon, do things that people either cannot do or will not do.
Yeah.
Right. And I use that as motivation in the speech to come up with uncommon because it was uncommon. And then that just related to everything else that I did stat wise, right? Nobody's done 45-25. Nobody's in my position played however many consecutive games that I played. Nobody's had the defensive touchdowns that I had except for 2 other people, and both of those guys were returners, Dion and Devin Hester. And these are all things that no DBs have had 1,200 tackles. Like these are all things that we said we weren't going to say my accolades. I just said them all.
I love it.
It's great. It's what you do.
But those are the things when I look back at my career writing that speech, nobody's doing that. So that's uncommon. And so now when I'm talking to players, talk to our guys, talk to young guys, hey, how did you do it? What's the secret? I mean, first of all, I'll use a Mike T-ism. The secret is there's no secret. You just got to put the work in.
That's it.
But the reality is, don't just be like that guy. If you're just trying to be as good as that guy, you're only ever going to be as good as that guy.
Yep.
And then you're just that guy. I always wanted to be myself, different, separated myself from the crowd because physically I did not. I don't look like Darrelle Revis looked, who went into the Hall of Fame with me. I don't look like Deion Sanders, who's best corner to ever play physically. I'm 5'9.5" with short arms that ran slow at the combine, but cared a whole hell of a lot about being perfect every single snap. And that's why I'm here.
It's amazing. There's so much for anybody to learn from this. Not just, I think sometimes people think, wow, well, that's sports. That's different. It's not different. I mean, I've seen you be a part of the Valspar charities and grow the
Oh, yeah.
Valspar tournament and
Mhm.
the amount of money that gives back from all the different interests you've been involved in. That same intensity, that same focus,
Yeah.
that's just winning at anything. I mean, that's just performance,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
I'm a guy that can't do something halfway. So for Valspar, for instance, Copperhead Charities, when they asked me to do it, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. We'll see what this is all about. And then I got involved and I'm like, now I'm never leaving this. So that's just me. It's just kind of how my mentality is. I care about how I'm represented, of course, but I also am very conscious about what it means. And you asked that question earlier about why I'm the same every time you see me, or how my mentality doesn't change no matter who I'm meeting. It's because of that. I'm aware of it, and I know that I might not ever see these guys again, but
yeah,
they're going to say, "Hey, Ronde's a damn nice guy."
yep.
So,
You got to be accountable to that.
right, exactly right. D-Mac, you still
That's
there?
good. I'm here. I'm just enjoying this, to be honest with you. I feel like a fly on the wall at this point. But you mentioned, the consecutive starts, and you're like, I don't know how many it was. Well, it's 224, side note,
Yeah.
but I bet you do know what it was. But
I don't like to brag.
I do want to just highlight. No, I hear you. You earned it. But I do want to highlight that for those people out there that like aren't familiar with like how long is that 224? Like I checked this out. Like you started every game from November 21st, 1999 until
Mhm.
December 30th, 2012. And
Right.
the only reason you didn't make your next start was because you retired, right? Somebody didn't take your job. You were like, I've had enough. And so we say this all the time. One of the hallmarks of greatness is consistency,
Yeah.
right? It's consistently showing up, ready to go, ready to do the work. But my guess is during that time, during that streak, there were days that you probably, I'm guessing, I don't know, you can tell me, that you maybe didn't feel great, didn't feel like doing the work, but you did it anyway. So for our business professionals out there, for people that are listening, like, how did you will yourself to do the work, and not just do the work, but do it at a Hall of Fame level? Like, how did you get to that place?
That's a fantastic question, because once you become good at something, your only next step is to become great at it. And once you become great at it, then what's next, right? Like, once you get a PhD, how do you get what's next? Move to
Yeah.
another career, I guess. But for me, it was all about finding ways to further perfect what I was doing. Um, and so I used to wake up, and I love practice, by the way. I never try as much as I never missed a game. I never missed practice either. Even when I
Whoa.
couldn't move, I'd still go out to practice and try to get myself ready and find a way to perfect my game during a practice that I wasn't 100% in. And I never got tired of that, because I knew there was always something. There's the devil's in the details, all those little things. Um, I I always looked at myself with a critical eye, and I knew that I wasn't perfect. Even though I was playing really well, making a lot of plays, it wasn't always perfect for me, not in my eyes. And I think being an ultimate, perfectionist, maybe a little bit of a narcissist and all these other things, um, made me wanna get better every single day. And so I got up every day thinking I can get that much better. And if I get that much better, it's gonna show up huge on Sundays. Um, and I tried to influence that in a lot of my guys, and I didn't really realize that I was doing it. But there was a guy, Will Allen, who was a DB. He ended up playing for us, and he played for Pittsburgh. He called me after I got in the Hall of Fame, and it was the sweetest message. And it was, "Man, you have no idea how much we all watched you prepare." And I was like, I've never even considered it, you know? Yeah, if they asked me for advice, I'd give it to them, but I never knew they had eyeballs on what I was doing every single day and how I was doing it. It's the ultimate compliment.
Wow. It's amazing. We have a saying around here: "There's no perfect, but there's a better."
Yeah.
And so let's just get better.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's no limit to better, right?
Absolutely.
And the in business, and I don't know if you would agree with this, if this is the way it is in the locker room. There's no perfect, there is a better, and teams don't win or lose from, they win and lose from the inside out, not the outside in. Like, I don't worry what another team or another company or another competitor is going to be. I worry what we're doing. Are we doing everything we can do to get better? Are we doing everything we can do to solve that problem for the customer? And I will take that. I'll gamble that if we are doing that, no one will beat us.
Right.
Because most people aren't willing to.
You know what the 3 most dangerous words in life are?
What's that?
Piece together. The 3 most dangerous words in life are, I got it.
Yes.
No, you don't.
Yeah, no, you don't.
When you think you got it, you don't got it.
I was thinking my son now. He's like, no, I got this. I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well. Yeah.
You sure? You might think you do, but don't tell me that I got it.
Yeah.
Like, always have that internal conversation with yourself that I need to do more.
Yeah.
So it works. It absolutely works.
I'm going to use that. I got it. I'm bringing that home.
I love that. Rondé, as a described perfectionist, right? As a defensive back, you're out on an island, man. Like, and when you get beat, everybody sees it, right? And so how did you, the very few times it happened, how did you?
I thought you had another stat there, D-Mac. Now that would have been crazy.
I didn't know. But like, how do you bounce back from failure, right? It's like, dang, man, you prepare all week. You got this guy in lockdown. All of a sudden, there's one time gets away or whatever, and it's like, shoot, everybody sees it. Like, how did you bounce back from that and go out and still be at your best for the next play?
I never got beat in my life. It may have been a bad call. Monty may have called the wrong defense.
Derek fell down.
Right, it was somebody else.
Didn't get to the QB.
No, it's funny you say that because Raheem Morris, who's was my head coach, DB coach. He's like, "Do you ever feel like you've been beat?" And I'm like, "You know what? I'm having a hard time remember when I was," and it speaks to that mentality. If it happened for a reason, and it's never going to happen again. So in my mind, it never happened, right? It was a learning experience. But once you have to put it back past you. I see so many people get crippled. It's in my sport, at least. I'm not sure about how it is in your business, but so many people in my sport get crippled with doing your job and getting beat. So, and failure happens. We all know that. I mean, as many good teams that I played on and Super Bowls and playoff games that I went to, a vast majority of my career was failure. We didn't make the playoffs for 7 years in a row or something like that at the end of my career. And so I was always crippled with that, like, God, I want this team to be as good as I was, 8 years ago. And finding a way to deal with that, it was probably the hardest thing I had to do in my career, to be honest with you, because you can't reconcile it by saying, I played good, right?
Yeah.
That means nothing, right? It means nothing. So dealing with it, I don't know that I ever dealt with it well, to be honest with you. I'm not an excuse maker. That's one thing. There's one thing that for me, and it was plastered on our wall. So this is not original to me, but I'm stealing it. It said, no excuses, no explanations, right? Those are both tools of incompetence, and we're all competent people. And if you start using those tools to deal with your failure, you're never going to get past them. You're just always like, well, my foot slipped. He got by me. Oh, really? I showed up 30 minutes late because my dog got sick in the morning. They're all excuses and explanations, right? You can hold them to yourself. Just to your point earlier, Brian, it's all about accountability.
Yep.
That's how you deal with failure. Become accountable.
And that accountability, you can't be accountable unless you're self-aware. Like, you got to be able to look in the mirror, and it's those dark places in the morning when you're staring, or late at night, the things you don't want to say out loud, that you have that conversation like, I know I didn't prepare the way I should have. I know I could have done this. I know I noticed it and didn't say anything. Like, those are the things that if you let haunt you, then you start to become afraid of losing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're afraid to lose, you can't win.
Right.
But if you acknowledge, you're right, I did that, I'm going to own it, but I'm never doing it again. I love what you said. Hey, if it happened, it'll never happen again. Therefore, it never happened. That there's a lot of power in that.
Right.
There is as you're describing that, Rondé, I was thinking about baseball closers, right? Spending most of my career in baseball,
Yeah.
the best closers in the world, they'll say the same thing around responding to failure. They're like, I didn't fail, I made a bad pitch.
Yeah.
Like I hit the middle of the plate and the guy hit it. He did what he was supposed to do. I didn't do what I was supposed to do, but I ain't going to do that again. I know what pitch he's looking for, or stuff like that.
Exactly.
And so it's just right to the, what was the thing I screwed up? Fine, learn from it, move on. Let's go. And that's how you're quote unquote able to bounce back from failure, is just
Exactly right.
what was the thing.
I
So
like, too bad I couldn't pitch. God, a lot more money.
yeah, you did pretty well for yourself.
I did all right.
It's easier in business, and I think that's the thing where we're spoiled in business. There's no shot clock. The clock doesn't run out. There's no, all we have to do, if we're willing to get better, you can outlast certain things. You can just outwork things. There's no, and then the downside of business though is there's no game film, right? The bigger a company people can hide, your teammates can hide, accountability gets more difficult, you
Yeah.
get more finger pointing. The dynamic of it is just fascinating. I mean, that's what I love about sports, is
Yes.
just the accountability of it. We can all watch film and say, yeah, you fell down. It's right there. I'll rewind it, and we try to recreate that as much as we can here, but business is a little tough. You can hide.
Well, it's
right?
definitely different because in sports, you have the immediacy of the result. You win or lose or tie, depending on what crazy sport you're playing. But in most instances, you know what you've done to either win or lose, and you can put it right there in front of you for the next day or 2 days later, 3 days later, however many. If you're the Bucks this week, it's 4 days because you got to play in 4 days. What you need to do to get better to win the next game. In business, I've always wondered how you keep that energy, right, or that initiative, or however you describe it, to make people find their end goal. Because obviously, you want the end goal is to. Actually, I don't know what your end goal is. What would be your end goal?
So we talk about making security possible for large companies, right? So if I look and I say I've got 800 customers, well, I know there's another 20,000 that we could help. So the end goal is always about the CIO, the Chief Information Security Officer, that CEO of a company that needs to make sure their brand is secure and their data is safe so they can go do whatever it is they do in the world, right? And so for us, we have to bring that solution to more and more people. And whether you're in accounting or working on payroll or coding something, building one of our applications, when you sit down at your laptop, you need an immense amount of clarity on what your job is and how it helps solving that problem for that
Right.
organization.
Right.
So it's always about who we serve, always about the problem that we solve. But to your point, hard to, beat that drum day in and day out because we don't have that shot clock. So if you get comfortable saying, I'll get to it tomorrow, we'll cancel that today. We just won't do it. And that's keeping the urgency, right? It's keeping that same intensity and urgency. And so there's tricks to it, but ultimately it's why a lot of companies, they seldom get beat by somebody else. They usually implode from the inside.
Right. That makes sense. So it's almost like if you're comparing it to sports, it's a business analogy would be the longevity of a career or the shortness of a career, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like in year 5, I finally hit this metric. And then in year 10, doing the same thing and getting better, I hit another metric, and so on and so forth. And then there's guys that only play 2 or 3 years, which I saw a lot of, where they weren't willing to put the same amount of work in. May have been immensely talented, and then 2 years they're out of the league, and you're like, man, what happened to that guy? Well, we all know what happened to that guy.
Yep.
We saw it. So in his business, because ultimately Rondé Barber is a business, right? I am the 1997 to 2012, that part of Rondé Barber was a business. And I made money doing that. I entertained people doing that, which is all a business. But in totality, I was successful because of everything that went in through those successive years. And then there's guys that don't do that and they don't make it, and their business fails. So that's the way I looked at it.
And I have to imagine unparalleled consistency over those years running that business. I have to imagine it's about as much about the things you didn't do to stay on the field as you did do, right? So the choices you knew, the things you knew you couldn't do. Sometimes it's about the things we don't do that make us better.
Right. Don't put words in my mouth. I had a lot of fun.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine.
But you're correct. There's plenty of ways to get yourself out of the NFL.
Yeah.
There's probably exponentially more of those than there are to get and stay in the NFL. Yeah, Tony Dungy used to give us a list every year. Out past 2:00, women you don't know or know too well. You know, he had a full list of them, man, and everybody was on board. And you know, I credit a lot of men in my realm that helped me get there. He was the first. You know, he gave me ideals to live by, standards to live by. You never wanted to disappoint him.
Yeah.
It was weird. Like, he wasn't your dad, you know? He's your coach. He's just a guy that drafted you or brought you in. And then with, like, a couple of weeks, you're like, I can't disappoint this guy. And
isn't it fascinating that the people in our lives that we see clearly hold themselves to a higher standard? They hold themselves that. They're not being held. No one's telling them to be that. They're that. That's who they are. Those are the people you don't want to disappoint. Like, those are the people that make you hold yourself to a standard.
right. Those are the guys you are in awe of. I tell people all the time, I was in awe of Tony. I was just
Yeah.
how he lived his life, how convicted he was to his faith, to his family, and then have the exact same conviction to what he was giving us. I don't know how he managed it, but he did. And there was great examples in that. And I think everybody that ever played underneath him realizes why he is the man that he is. Right? There's no bad experience with him. It's always
It's not an act, right? It's
right.
who he is.
all
Yeah.
positive, true experience. You know, we all watched him deal with the death of a son. It was, and that's when I truly became in awe. And he was sitting in the church talking about his son that had just taken his own life, and I could not imagine how he handled it, and he handled it beautifully. And to me, I'll always respect him. If one thing, just for that, but how he mic, I don't. It's not micromanages, but like, what's the word? Compartmentalized it all, and then still went out and did his job. It was amazing. He was unbelievable, man.
Well, there's a word always seems to follow Tony around when he's talked about. I've only met him a couple times, but always grace, right? It's he shows grace. He just seems to always follow him.
Yeah.
He's carries himself.
Yeah.
Rondé, I want to talk about some of the teams you played on. Championship team versus teams that didn't make the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about, leadership, talking about Coach Dungy and some other coaches you've had. I'm curious. I'm thinking about the entrepreneurs. I'm thinking about the business professionals out there that are building a team. What were some glaring differences that you saw between the best teams you played on, championship teams, versus teams that underperformed?
Talent. Easy question, man. Yeah. Look, when I first got here, Steve had a lot of talent. We were destined to win a Super Bowl. I mean, we just were. We were built to win a Super Bowl. Had great players on both sides of the ball. We had a good enough quarterback, right? And so we eventually won a Super Bowl because of the talent there. That was coupled with what we were just talking about: great leadership, innovative coaches, guys that could get the best out of each individual. And I look a couple years down the road, the teams that were rebuilt is the best way to say it, with young guys who had different mentalities about the game, had different motivations while they were playing the game, and while the talent may have been there, they weren't ready to maximize it. And that starts at the top. You know, that's leadership. That's setting an expectation. That's a belief in the way that you're going to go about doing your business. So you're gonna start your business, Brian, and you have a list of things that matter most that every single person in that building needs to believe in. And if you have half of them that believe and half of them that don't, I don't think you're going to be successful. It's not going to win. And so the good teams that I played on had that list. Everybody bought into it. The teams that didn't have that either didn't have talent, but the ones that didn't buy into that list. There was some selfishness there, and that's. I mean, for me, it was hard to reconcile. I'm trying to be a leader and trying to get people to buy into what I know works, but in reality, each individual has to do that themselves, and if they don't, there's only so much you can push them.
Yeah, that's kind of, I kind of think about effort, right? Like effort's the only thing you can't give to somebody else. It doesn't matter how much talent.
Can't coach effort.
Yep, can't coach it, can't motivate it, can't, it's you're either doing it or not, and no one can take it from you. No one can compress it. No one can. It's the only thing you have that you can, exude into the world whenever you want, and it's your choice.
Exactly right. If you're coaching effort, then you're probably failing.
Couldn't agree more. So, and DMAC, before I got to bring this up because we've been talking about. So I think I talked to you about this. Well, Rondé knows we're a member of the same golf club.
Oh yeah.
I want to congratulate him for winning the member this weekend. So second time, top player in the club. And it's a Old Memorial, great golf club, a lot of good players. So talk to me. I started my golf journey 11 months ago. I'm terrible. You hear about this all the time. Talk to me. When did you pick up the game? I want to hear, how did you get from there to here? I gotta hear this.
I was once terrible, and I'll correct you. So 3 years ago, I won the gross and the member. This year I won the net. Still victories, but different type of victories.
Both big time.
Both big time. So I started playing golf I'm not gonna lie. My first introduction to a golf club was in 1996, my last year at Virginia, going into my last year at Virginia, because I fell into the Tiger phenomenon.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods was making golf. Wow, that's kind of cool. I'm gonna go play golf. Can't be that hard. It's all this wasted green grass all over Charlottesville. There's, courses with holes in it. I can go do that. And I was terrible. And I'm a good athlete. But to answer that question truthfully, I got here in 1997. It was a guy named Anthony Parker. He was a DB, and he played golf every Friday. And he drugged me to the golf course every Friday, my rookie year, and said, "Ronnie, we're gonna go balls, make them play 9 holes." And I was bad. I was bad for 2 or 3 years. And then in 2000, I was a free agent, and I'd played Old Memorial one time, and I said, "If I sign a new contract back with Tampa, I'm joining Old Memorial."
I love it.
And my very first check, no doubt, Brian, after I signed that contract, was the Old Memorial.
See, what I'm taking from this is it goes back to effort. I have that. It's a talent thing. See, that must be my problem. It's just lack of talent.
No.
Lack of talent.
There is significant learned skill involved in golf. Think about when Tiger started playing golf. He was 1, right? So it's just repetitive. Like Rod Marinelli was defensive line coach here. He's head coach of Detroit Lions for a couple of years, but just one of the great position coaches in football history. And he always said, and he said it to his D lineman, but he was talking to the whole team. You are what you repeatedly do. I've told my kids this all the time. They're like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, you become what you repeatedly do. What are you talking about? Dude, if you want to be good at lacrosse, you got to shoot 1,000 lacrosse balls in a ball in net. If you want to be good at golf, you got to hit 1,000 shots until it's repetitive, and it's what you do. It's what you repetitively do. And once you become that, that's who you are. So you are what you repeatedly do.
Wow. At OM, I'm in the pine straw. I can sell hats in the pro shop, pine straw hats. No, I'm enjoying it. I like to bring it up because I love that place. I love the being able to focus and find greatness into things, the challenge of it, the grind of it, the camaraderie of it, just the mental challenge, right? To just really to focus on that one thing. It's been fun.
But once you get somewhat good at it, then you can just chase it. Then you can throw your mentality. That's what we're talking about now.
Oh yeah.
Then you can throw that into the competition, or whether it's, playing your buddy for $25 or $100 or $1,000, whatever you play for, and not worrying about the process. Like, the process is done, right? Like we were just saying earlier, DMAC Hayes in a barn, right? Then I can just go focus on beating your ass.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then I'm good.
Yeah. It's been a fun journey. I enjoy it, man. I enjoy the challenge. It beats you up, but you keep coming back. It's close.
The future of golf is good for you, I think.
I hope so. I hope so. If you need to find me, I'm all the way in the back out there with Dustin. He's like, remember what we said this? Don't do that anymore. So a lot of that. Well, look, I know we're keeping you past time. You've been too generous with your time, and
Well, hold on. I just got one more because it, it's the one question we ask every guest that comes on here. No Show Dogs podcast, right? We talk about a no show dogs mentality is about one thing, doing the
Yeah.
work, right?
Yeah.
It's not right. It's not about looking good. It's about being good, And so with that being said, it's all about being willing to do the things that others aren't willing to do. So last question for you. Again, I've loved this. We could go on for hours. But reflecting on your career now, you step back and you look at it, and you've touched on this throughout, but if you could package it all up, like what were some of the things that you were willing to do that others weren't, that has helped you have the success you've had up to this point?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know about you, but I liked looking good too while I was playing good. I don't know if that relates to the no show dogs, mentality, but I wanted to look good. It's a funny story. If you go back and look at my rookie, and this is just about physically looking good, not about the mentality of no show dogs, but I had these huge shoulder pads. I wore enormous pads on my legs, and I had like high top cleats. And I was like, I am the worst looking defensive back in football. So I was always scared to ask the equipment guys for changes. So my next year when I started playing, I was like, I got to get rid of these pads, man. And and I started to look good, and I started playing good. So the Dion mentality, you look good, play good, pay good, all that stuff, that's kind of true. But what was I willing to do? Look, I had this sense of not having succeeded my first year, that I had to do everything that my coaches asked of me. And then when they asked me for more, I had to say yes. And so I remember when I didn't start playing until my second year. And there was a guy, Anthony Parker, again, a guy we talked about, he got hurt. And he was an outside corner that moved inside, played nickel. So that's the nexus of how my career started to take shape. He got hurt, I took over his job. And there were things that they asked him to do that he either could not or would not do. And I told myself, I'm doing it. And whether that was making tackles in the run game, in the A gap or the B gap, which is not fun for a guy my size, but it was something I ended up being really good at. I did it, right? And it's a small example, but it was a way that I could differentiate myself, not only from Anthony, but from everybody else that was playing a position on all 31 other teams in the league. And eventually, you know, 5, 6 years down the road, every coach is asking our coaches, how do y'all do that? How do y'all get him to do that? Right? What are y'all teaching him? And he plays like a linebacker, he covers like a DB, he's willing to hit, and I mean, those are the reasons why I became an all-pro, because people put the film on, they were like, "Shit, that guy's pretty good," right? Doesn't look the part, but he's pretty good, and the rest is history, obviously.
Man, that's incredible. Your mindset, the way you chose to go about your business, you raised the standard of the position, right?
Sure.
Other coaches were coming around going, how do you get him to do that? Right. And it
Right.
was you making the decision saying, hey, I'm willing to do the things that others cannot or will not do. I'm willing to do that to differentiate myself. I love that, man. That's
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely. And it was fun. I had a good time. I'd do it all over again.
I love that.
And focused on doing it the right way, and and the impact you've had in the community, you continue to have. It's been amazing just to see it and watch it and be around it. It's given me things to look up to and things I need to run down and play a bigger role.
I'll say this one last thing, and it's a mentality that was brought to me by Mike Tomlin when he came here, and he told me, "To whom a lot is given, a lot is expected." And it was the first time somebody had told me that I was given a lot. And I didn't really know what he meant, but he's like, part of it is your skill set, part is your mentality, part is your willingness to do things other people won't. You've been given a lot. So I'm expecting a lot from you. So to whom a lot is given, a lot is expected. And that's spilled its way over to me in the community. I understand who I am here in Tampa. I've been given a lot. This community loves me. I imagine they'll always love me because I love them back. But in that same vein, I've been given a lot. I expect this community to expect a lot from me as well.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time, D-Mac. It's always good. This is the best. I don't know how we top this. Like this, Rondé's the man.
We'll find a way.
We're gold.
In the spirit of Rondé, we're gonna have to find a way to get a little better on this.
That's true.
So, but you're right. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Rondé, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
A lot of fun. Hey, go out there, make it great today, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
Take care. See you guys. Yep.